Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're going to demystify something that is happening inside your head right at this very moment. You know, we often think of our eyes and ears as basically just video cameras and microphones, right? Like they're just passively recording the world around us. But honestly, that is incredibly far from the truth. Your brain is actively and aggressively constructing your reality out of a chaotic, messy jumble of disjointed sensory inputs. It actually relies on this hidden blueprint of mental shortcuts to make any sense of the world at all. And by the time we wrap up today, you're going to understand exactly how it pulls off this incredible magic trick.
Okay, let's dive right into this and put that brain of yours to the test. Take a look at this incredibly famous optical illusion. It was created by a Danish psychologist named Edgar Rubin way back in 1915. Now don't overthink it, just let your eyes naturally settle on the image. So what did you see first? Was it a black vase right in the center? Or did your eyes immediately lock on to two white faces in profile, looking directly at each other? If you keep staring at it, you're probably going to notice your brain is actively tricking you. You can kind of force yourself to alternate between seeing the vase and seeing the faces, but you can't really see both of them at the exact same time. Your brain is literally forced to make a choice about what is the main object and what is just background.
To figure out why our brains do this, we've got to rewind to the early 1900s to a school of thought called Gestalt Psychology, which was founded by thinkers like Max Wertheimer. The German word Gestalt roughly translates to shape or whole, and these psychologists proved that our minds absolutely do not just passively sum up visual parts. Instead, they discovered that the unified whole is actually completely different from the sum of its parts. Your brain takes raw, meaningless shapes and actively organizes them into a coherent story.
So here's our map of the mind for this explainer. 1. The illusion of perception. 2. Laws of visual organization. 3. Navigating the auditory world. 4. The rules of speech. And 5. Survival in modern design.
Section 1. The illusion of perception.
Let's start with the fundamental mechanics of how your brain assigns focus. When your brain flips back and forth between the vase and the faces, it's experiencing a phenomenon called multi-stable perception. But now, what's really interesting about this is what's happening under the hood. MRI scans show that when we interpret that image as faces, there's a huge spike of activity in the temporal lobe, which makes sense. That's the specific region of the brain we use for facial recognition. But when your brain decides to interpret those exact same pixels as a vase, that brain activity just vanishes. Your perception literally changes your brain's physical response. Crazy, right?
Section 2. Laws of visual organization.
So how exactly does the brain sort through all this visual data so incredibly fast? Well, it uses a rapid-fire toolkit. At first glance, a random collection of dots doesn't really look random to us at all. Your brain instantly, without you even trying, groups them into distinct columns. Boom! This is the law of proximity in action. Simply because those objects are placed physically closer to each other, your brain just goes ahead and assumes they're related, grouping them together into a unified whole. But proximity is really just one piece of the puzzle. Psychologists have found that your brain relies on 4 main underlying rules to force your eyes to link or separate elements into a foreground and a background. You've got blurriness, where sharp edges make central images pop, while blurry edges just fade to the back. Contrast, stark black and white makes sorting super easy. Size, larger areas are usually assumed to be the main object. And finally, separation. Isolated objects become the figure, while tightly packed objects just blend into the ground. Let's try another quick interactive game. Take a look at this collection of shapes. You're probably seeing an airplane, right? But if you look closer, there is no airplane there. Seriously, it is just a series of disconnected, jagged black shapes. This is the law of closure. Your brain absolutely hates contradictory or incomplete information, so it actively steps in and fills in the missing white gaps to create a meaningful, completed image of an airplane completely out of thin air.
And this brilliantly illustrates our final visual rule, the law of Pragnantz. It's also known as the law of simplicity. When you look at the Olympic rings, you just see 5 overlapping circles. You don't see a highly complex, totally chaotic assortment of curved, broken lines. Your brain takes the visual environment and aggressively boils it down to the absolute simplest, most stable form possible.
Section 3. Navigating the auditory world. Let's move on and see how this builds when we pivot from the eyes over to the ears. We know our eyes use Gestalt laws like proximity and closure to group shapes. But what about the things we hear? Sound doesn't arrive at your ears as neat little blocks. It hits you as an invisible, messy incident waveform, literally a chaotic jumble of frequencies.
A totally fascinating paper from researchers at MIT and a few other institutions looked at how our auditory system takes this chaotic wave and somehow manages to segregate it into coherent, understandable streams.
The absolute ultimate test for this auditory organization is something scientists call the cocktail party problem. Imagine you're at a super crowded, noisy party. Glasses are clinking, music is blaring, and dozens of people are talking all at once. Yet you are somehow able to completely untangle all those concurrent acoustic streams and isolate the single voice of your friend standing right in front of you. How on earth does your brain achieve this incredible feat of organization?
Section 4. The rules of speech.
For decades, scientists just assumed that brain essentially copy-pasted those simple visual rules straight over to how we hear speech. But that MIT research reveals something way more complex. Mechanically, hearing works in two parts. First, the specific sensory details arrive at your ear as a massive, jumbled waveform. Then, perceptual analysis kicks into high gear to resolve those details into coherent streams, basically separating the music from the laughter and the laughter from the speech.
But here is the massive plot twist from the researchers. Human speech actually violates simple Gestalt principles at numerous junctures. Speech is incredibly complex. It's constantly shifting in pitch and time. If our brains only use simple rules like, hey, just group similar frequencies together, human language would literally sound like a garbled mess. Instead, the researchers prove that our brains have developed a highly specific sensitivity to the unique acoustic modulations of speech itself. We don't just group sounds by similarity. Our brains are uniquely hardwired to hunt for and organize specific phonetic patterns. They're looking for the actual building blocks of language.
Section 5. Survival and modern design.
Okay, this brings us to the ultimate question. The big so what? Why does the brain expend so much massive computing power to organize our visual and auditory worlds like this? Well, the answer is evolutionary survival. The ability to instantly separate a figure from the ground is exactly what kept our ancestors alive. Whether it was scanning a complex forest background to cut through the visual noise and spot a hidden berry bush, instantly recognizing a friendly human face in a crowd, or perhaps, most importantly, detecting a lethal threat perfectly camouflaged in the brush.
So, the crucial point here is captured perfectly in what scientists call the snake detection theory. Research heavily suggests that our visual system and our brain's whole ability to use figure-ground perception literally evolved in large part just to quickly spot the distinct shape of a snake hidden in the grass. I mean, that one mental shortcut was literally the difference between life and death.
Now, obviously, we aren't dodging venomous snakes nearly as often today, but these ancient mental shortcuts, they are still constantly being triggered. Modern artists and corporate designers use these exact same figure-ground rules to manipulate our attention all the time. Take the modern FedEx logo, for example. By using the exact right proximity and closure between the bold text, the designer actually forces the ground, the negative white space right between the E and the X, to form the shape of a forward-pointing arrow. It creates this clever hidden sense of motion by literally using your brain's own shortcuts against it. Which leaves us with this final, kind of wild thought. The next time you walk into a room or try to focus on a voice in a crowded space, remember that you aren't just passively absorbing reality. Your brain is actively constructing it for you. Look around the room you're in right now. What missing gaps is your brain filling in? What background noise is it completely filtering out? And how is your brain actively tricking you at this very second? Keep questioning your perception, and we'll see you in the next explainer.